I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This week, I caught up with Jesse Phillips, co-founder and CEO of Trustware, and a founder I had the privilege of investing in through Techstars Web3 back in 2023, with the vision of Trustware becoming the connective tissue of Web3. Jesse first joined me on the show back in April of 2023 on episode 215, so check that out for the full backstory of Jesse and Trustware. Since then, Jesse and his team have done what many thought impossible, building a cross-chain payments and identity layer on just $400,000 in capital.
Money never sleeps, pal.
This episode dives into the 2-year grind, building through the bear, choosing focus over fast cash, and rallying a mission-aligned team with nothing more than conviction and a taste for the mud. We talk about why the world needs a switchboard for crypto, how Trustware unlocks usability without compromising on trust or trustlessness, and what it takes to keep going when your team's next paycheck isn't guaranteed, but the mission never wavers. If you're into founder grit, building through the mud, and startups that actually ship instead of shout, this one's for you. So let's get into it with Jesse Phillips, all right here on Money Never Sleeps. Listen, Jesse, it was awesome to see you last week. Thank you for coming to New York.
Awesome. Yeah. It was great to see you and Hugh and watch where the program has come. I mean, it's just unbelievable to see it not even, 2 years later?
Yep. Not even 2 years later. No, and it was fantastic to be able to spend time with you as well afterwards. So that was an epic evening, as we should say, right?
Yeah. No, it's always a pleasure. And even in program, I feel like you don't get that much, right? It's like you're going, and then it's over. So it's great to just see you guys and talk shop and talk life as well. We had a nice long conversation.
We did. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Listen, you went through Techstars Web3 in 2023. Let's just rewind and bring us back to the original spark for Trustware.
In hindsight, I think we just jumped in so quickly, right? And it was just oh my God, I've met this person and, your co-founder, oh, let's go. Like we had this idea, but it originally started on a whiteboard at Draper University. I had left rain.com. It was rain.bh, now it's rain.com, kind of the market crash of 22, and hiked the Camino in Spain with my sister and kind of trying to figure out what we were doing next, right? What I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to still stay in crypto. Had spent the better part of nearly 8 years at that point, right? 2017 onwards. And I said, well, what the heck? Let's just go to this Draper reunion. If for nothing else, it'll be good to be back in Silicon Valley. And met Jonathan and, started talking on a bus that turned into a whiteboard that night. And the original idea really came from a personal problem. I think this is always, right? Like, when I think VCs or anyone looks for founder market fit, it's like, how badly does this matter to you? And the answer was I got SIM swapped in the very beginning of 2019 and lost, honestly, life-changing money. So the problem of security wasn't only it was personal first and foremost, but I'd also spent time at Binance, also spent time at Rain and managed clients that were just getting hacked left and right, losing money. And so I think the original spark was, is a very weird way of going about it, but it was like, what if we could just bring native 2FA to the blockchain? We're not trying to solve the ultra cold storage key problem. We're just trying to solve the average person not getting their MetaMask or not getting their Exodus or whatever they were using at the time hacked. And so the original idea was, all right, can we do native 2FA, 2 out of 3 keys to unlock, something that was basically built off multi-sig, but just make hot wallets more secure. Right. So somewhere between a hot and cold wallet, we used to say, I think it was hot wallet usability, cold wallet security. That was kind of what we were doing when we came into Techstars. And I think what you guys saw in us that was different. Passkeys before passkeys type, really inspired also by Apple Pay, right? And kind of security in the background, right? Don't have to think about it. That was the original idea that came off that whiteboard. I'd gone to Burning Man that year and then came back and Jonathan just had this wild idea. He's like, I think I got it. And it was identity, security, and recovery key. 2 out of 3 could unlock. if you lose one, you could always recover using the other two, really just putting it in the hands of the users. And that was the spark of Trustware. That's where the name comes from, the castle, our logo, everything.
Since the program ended in 2023, what tends to happen when startups come out of an accelerator program is that some go on to raise, some continue to work and then decide to raise later. And you'd fall into the second camp where you've decided to continue to build and then raise later. But it's much later. And walk me through what's taken place over the last couple of years and your choice to do that, to just keep building. And you have raised an amount that many others have not been able to, but it's not what would have been expected in terms of, hey, listen, we're just going to go do this over the next 2 years with $400K. So walk us through that decision and how things played out.
Part of it is conscious, and then part of it is also when you look at yourself in the mirror after a pivot and say, we have really high conviction in this, but also this is such a big idea, almost like primitive level, right? Or a platform versus a product. It may not make a ton of sense to those that would immediately write a check until at which point they can really feel and touch the core of it. When we looked at what we really wanted to do here, which is as if security is not enough for the average user, that giant space, we came out of Techstars, and I love that you keep on saying this now, with this thesis that you needed to build usability, security, and accessibility, and that these pillars actually need to be essentially one product, right? Like all inside of things. We'd seen people do one or two. We'd never really seen three. So it was like, well, our choice is, is this a moat? Can we do something different? And also, is this going to make sense to people until we have it out there? When we had originally started pitching and going for that, the answer really was no. People were like, are you a wallet? And we're like, no, not really. Like, you're not a chain? No. Okay, you're not doing a token? No. So like, what are you? And really it was like that discovery alongside user feedback that we also still needed to go through, because we started at the massive problem space and we're like, well, the product that fits for the users will come out of that. I think it's almost exactly opposite from what Techstars preaches and what the standard is like, figure out exactly what you're building for whom. We just knew that that this toolkit, so to speak, was really, really, really important. And now we're starting to see, oh yeah, it really is important. But that was part of it. And then honestly, I think we were just like, our team is kind of used to the grind positions I had before. I had felt what it was like to have a lot of resources and still be bored or really unhappy with how much progress we were making. And I knew that I was comfortable with the mud, and I looked across the table and I saw Jonathan was the same. And we said, well, we can do this. Let's just put our heads down. Let's stay focused. Very Uniswap, right? Like build in the bear type thing and then explode in the bull.
Definitely. What's been the hardest part of building with these kinds of constraints?
I have such a clear picture of where things are going, and I have this amazing team around us. It's both like a blessing and a curse. And I think that you look at it and you say, well, this also creates focus. We're as fast to move as a speedboat, but the direction that you choose, like you're kind of like a cruise ship, right? You can't switch courses too much when you have such low resources. You really have to stay locked in. So you could pivot really quickly to something. You see something on the rise and you're like, all right, we're going that direction. Once you're locked into that direction, though, we need to be firm on this direction. One of the superpowers of having kind of this approach to building a company is also that it really does force you to stay focused as the distractions come around, meme coin cycle, all of these other things that were coming out during this pretty long period where it could dilute focus. It's like, well, we don't have the ability to do that. I think that that's kind of a superpower, right? The longer you stay focused on something with high conviction, I think the better you figure out that problem space.
Do you think that's the biggest thing you've gained by not raising more capital early on? Is that focus?
I would say that, and also I think the type of team members. And this has been a little bit more recent, but even as early as Techstars, there was a period at the end when we really had kind of the concept, how we're going to approach this. I think we had really mapped out, and we took a while mapping out all the solutions and architecture. Then we were hiring like I think it was like a dev a week for like 4 or 5 weeks. I could ask Jonathan, right? It was kind of crazy at the end of Techstars. We're sitting in Prague in this like sculpture garden because we stayed in Europe, trying to finish off this marathon strong, hiring like crazy. But it was like, well, we don't really have a ton of resources. So the type of people that come in are both A, I want to learn, and B, I'm like the ideology of like what we stand for as a company, I think meant more than just collecting a paycheck. And I think really that has also continued. When I ask myself, why do people follow us into the fire when things are unknown? It's like, well, because the idea, the concept of what we want to bring to this, the ethos of this company is worth so much more than the paycheck, so to speak. I think that's changing now, but like that is the other, I think, superpowers. You get just thesis aligned people, right?
Yeah, you do. I get that. They say sometimes that like if you can pay someone a big salary, they are not really a co-founder. They are a first employee, right?
Yeah.
And so it's better to have that kind of mentality of people all jumping in and driving towards this vision, where the vision is more important than the money going in their pocket at that point in time. Now, we all got to eat, right?
Of course.
Yeah, I get that. Has there been a moment in the past 2 years, Jesse, where it would have been easier just to throw in the towel?
I wouldn't say weekly.
Okay.
I think that's an overstatement, but like there's been periods, maybe once every month, once every 2 months, where I honestly think there were points where I was doing it for the team. That's the other thing is like when you get thesis aligned people, when you get people that you can look across the table, and this is just beyond, right? You start having that with your co-founder, that kind of marriage, right? But when you look across the table, like a good example is Calvin, right? You know, someone who heard me speak and hounded me to come work for us. And it was like foreign to me. When I look across the table and I see him giving up his weekends, when I see the broader team, it's like, yeah, that gets me up in the morning. I know that this is bigger than us. But yeah, I mean, this might not be the best thing to say, especially for VCs listening, but it also could be. It's like, I had to, in the last year, stand up in front of the entire team and say, I do not know where your next paychecks are coming from. But what I can promise you, or I can't promise that paycheck, but what I can promise you is that I will do everything in my waking hours and my absolute power to get you what you need to continue. We will not judge you if you walk out that door. You've all done incredible work. But if you choose to stay, I believe we're onto something huge. And that like realization, especially the night before when I know I'm going to address the team, it was a Friday. Like we have our demo days on Fridays, huge, uplift usually in the week. You come into the weekend strong. I was so nervous about it. I could stand up in front of an audience of 300 people. I could pitch anyone, but standing up in front of the people that really make the clock tick and saying, I don't know. Oh man, I wanted to quit. Yeah, 100%.
I bet. Well, they say it's a badge of honor for every time that you say that to your team. And the number of times you have to say that to your team is one more badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
Or
and
one
no
more
one quit.
big step forward in eventually realizing the vision.
Exactly. And the thing is, and no one quit. And that to me was like, oh my God. Like, okay, it's one thing to have a product and have something there, but even before a product is a vision. And even before that is, I think, what in some ways we're kind of missing in this space as we've gone from ideals to just commas and zeros, which is like, why do we start this in the first place? What is that revolutionary spirit that gets someone to give up a huge portion of their life to go chase a dream? When I saw that in the team, the mirror back, I was like, all right, yeah. Since then, I have not had a day where I wanted to fold. That was a turning point for me, 100%. Yeah.
That's great. And speaking of the product, Jesse, a couple of weeks ago when you and I caught up, the big unlock for me with where you've gotten to with the product was use the term switchboard, right?
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me. And you can talk more about that. But, what has been the biggest unlock so far in terms of the product and where it is now, or how you're positioning yourself in the market?
Yeah. I mean, that switchboard concept and this other concept of kind of the identity level housing the logic has really been, I think, the big unlock and a way to basically make this a lot simpler for people to understand. And that switchboard concept is brutally simple because a lot of us are too young to have lived this, but it's so pervasive, which is back in the day, if I wanted to call you Pete and you're in Ireland and I'm in Boston, it's like we're out of luck. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
the lines don't work. You needed essentially the switchboard to come in where you could call and the operator would say, yes, I'm going to patch you into Pete and dial you on the other side. And, you know, it first started, it was like, it's kind of like when you play with your friends and you've got the cup with the string on either end and you could hear them through it. And then in the early 1900s, the local lines that was just Bell or whatever then get expanded and then it goes international. It's like the thing that unlocked all of that was the switchboard, was the ability to have someone else route me to Pete. And we looked at crypto and we said, like, as an aggregate, we've been on this cross-chain path since essentially like middle of Techstars, right? That was a huge bet for us. But the rails are built, right? Those are the chains. And in aggregate, if you look at it in a cross-chain way, there's enough scalability, we believe already, especially with the pervasiveness of L2s, right? The messages are assets. I want to send a message that just also happens to include money. But what's missing is the ability to have that switchboard to route it all to make sure that I'm getting to Pete on the other side. And once we realized that kind of what we had built on the usability side in terms of this single universal identity, right? This programmable identity and routing layer, then we were like, wait a second, we are the switchboard. The paradigm has now shifted, or what we are building is really the paradigm shifts from sending to a wallet where I need to know what chain, what asset, what wallet address. And if I get anything wrong, we're out of luck. To I'm going to send to a person and all of those routing preferences, that switchboard is hidden under something that is just as simple as a name. That was so much bigger than I think we had even envisioned before because it opens up so much more in terms of the downstream effects and really started kind of like impacting our go-to-market. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even for me, right? And that when I'm moving crypto between wallets, that I still go to the receiving wallet and check and make sure that I've got the address right, even though I've sent, I don't know how many transfers before, but I still check because there's still that worry. Can you talk more about what the product has become now? Right. And yes, there's that switchboard concept, but in terms of who is it applicable for and how are you deploying this into the market?
I think the big unlock, as I've said, is like we look at identity not just as the static thing, right? But really as a smart transaction endpoint. So like what you're saying is so real in terms of like usability as well. There are so many situations where you're like, well, my friend is on a different chain or has a different wallet and I want to get it to them. And that process, even though it is absolutely crucial in terms of crypto right now and is getting even more crucial, right? With more money coming on chain. We'll talk a little bit about that. That process is still manual. Imagine that I wanted to do business with Japan right now. And instead of being able to have the bank wire it and have it land as yen, I had to first swap into yen and then find out what their bank account number is in their own system. That is what we're pushing users through right now, is that they have to do all of the heavy lifting, all the manual lifting. And simultaneously, this is also the place where like most wallets, right? Like kind of the entry point and the place where you hold your assets and your home on chain, a wallet. It's where they make a lot of their money. And yet they're still pushing the users through these crazy manual processes, like something like 13 steps, often manual, right? And so where we started to see real interest is actually at the receive side, especially with smaller ecosystems. For the first time ever, if I want to get into, say, a stablecoin payments platform, they may only support one or two chains. I might have all this liquidity over here, or my friend wants to send me money, but they're on a different chain. And you see all these stablecoin payments platforms, as this use case gets pushed out and adopted by the world, kind of being siloed in each place. So like Sling.money can't really talk to MiniPay. It would be really, really cool if it did, because both of them have great product market fit. And so it's like, well, if we put DotOX in the middle, the wallet or payment platform doesn't actually even need to adopt anything. All they need to do is tell their users, literally throw your public key, right, into this very simple address manager. And all of a sudden we open up to the billions of dollars of liquidity. And this is only getting more crucial. It's like $100 billion come in the last 12 months alone. 80% increase year on year in terms of stablecoin issuance, right? And that's still split across maybe 6 to 8 major chains, and then a whole host of other ones down there. Citibank predicts it's like 3.7 in the next 5 years trillion. And that joins another 3.4 trillion that's existing on chain. And we're like, well, if we could simplify it, getting to the place it needs to be in the asset, it needs to be on the right rails by being that switchboard, well, then everything just talks to each other. Then it's just simple for the user. And that, I think, has been really kind of the unlock for us. Even just as something as simple as I have USDT on Tron, and Pete, you want USDT or USDC on Base. It's a dollar coin, right? It's a stable coin, same asset, doesn't talk to each other. Now with this one simple thing in the middle, 30 seconds to set up, it does. And that has been kind of the breakthrough, right? We didn't expect it, honestly, on stable coins because our platform does so much more. It does, like you can make any asset payable basically on any chain we support, but that's where we're starting to see it. And even use cases like I want to simplify everything into one asset and then kind of push it through into maybe fiat. There's a couple of cool things that the market has kind of tapped us for. So
yeah, like even the simplest thing is a dust collector, right? That look at all of the different dust or bits of tokens that I have in my wallet, and can I just send it all to one place and it all gets consolidated down?
We literally saw, as soon as we pushed out kind of the initial version onto mainnet, we were starting to look at users and what their behavior was, and then just build around the things that kind of appear. And one of them was what we call self swaps, which is exactly that use case. It's like, all right, we saw a lot of users building a .ox name, putting in their wallets, and then sending to themselves instead of a friend or a creator or whatever. And it's like, oh no, we're just going to put this inside of the dashboard so you could self swap. This is a huge, huge use case, right? Binance, when I was there, did a ton of value because they were like, hey, you could swap all your dust into BNB. Guess what happens? BNB becomes a more important asset. It's the gateway now, right? So choose anything.
I was going to ask you, would you be more comfortable with a handful of institutional use cases landing on Trustware to drive volumes, or 1,000 individual users? But I did think of just an institutional use case here that you got me thinking about it, that derivative traders, when they're trading listed derivatives, that their end of day positions that they hold are only a factor of how quick they move before the market closed. So you may end up with a handful of contracts just there overnight that you probably don't want exposure to. And so could there be a dust collector for derivative contracts that are on chain on a perpdex, a perpetuals decentralized exchange, and that where you just plug in Trustware and you have the .ox address and everything is just consolidated down. And there are things on cross-collateralization. I was listening to Stani Kulichov from Aave today on the FinTech Blueprint podcast, and he was talking about what's happening with V4 on Aave. And I'm like, the bells are ringing in my head where he's talking about this new hub and spoke model. And I'm like, cross-collateralization, boom, boom, boom. And it's that you can consolidate so quickly. And by having this kind of facility in place, we are going leaps and bounds beyond the capability of traditional finance with what's possible here with programmable assets and programmable identity.
Yes, without question. It's like I think I've always thought that that parity is not enough. It's that 10x. Like maybe I heard it from you guys or whatever it is.
It's got to be 10x.
Yeah. Something we focus on as well is the friction of getting a user in. But the friction of adopting an entire new financial ecosystem doesn't come unless it has those enormous benefits. And you see like the slowly, then all at once, like even with stable coins, right? It's another great example of product market fit. It just balloons because it actually solves the problem. If I'm MasterCard, if I'm Visa, if I'm anyone that's looking at this, the fact that I can send any money or any amount of money in the world for well less than a cent on most L2s, or even some other L1s, it's a no-brainer, right? Like this is an upgrade from Swift. So then it's a 10x upgrade, right? Like that, then you start to see the billions being poured in. And I think we are at that point right now. And that's the joy of, I think, also building in this space and having a long tail vision of it. I came in 2017 and you could dream about this stuff, but you could never build it. Now it's like all the tools are out there. half the time we look for a solution, we're like, oh, we could just piece this with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
and I think it's going to move so quickly from here, people just aren't even going to realize, and that's fine that they don't, because it should just transition to on-chain finance. And that's just how the financial markets will end up working. And it will be something behind the scenes that will be 10x more efficient, 10x more usable, 10x more secure, and 10x more accessible. And I have enjoyed saying that over and over and over again, Jesse. So thank you for lending me that thesis on USA. That is my USA, right?
Yeah.
Usable,
I love
secure,
that
and accessible.
I love that it matters to you as well, because I think that's also one of those things where it's a driving force. Like I remember you said, oh, you know, you weren't quoted on that. I'm like, that is the point, Pete, because the idea becomes bigger than the people. That it's someone else quotes you now, or someone else brings that over because they heard Pete, and all of a sudden it's a thing. It's not someone's thesis. It's a driving force behind it.
Speaking of Techstars specifically, and the things that we went through together back 2 years ago, and Hugh McGurr and the team, that how do you think you've changed as a founder in the last couple of years?
I think the biggest thing, and I think I've been okay at this before, but it's just learning that you're not going to be perfect or good at everything. When I look at kind of the aspirational companies, I think one of the things that sets them apart is the ability of a founder, or a founding team for that matter, to be able to scale with the business. So often you see the people that are amazing at 0 to 1 just fall flat at the 1 to 10. And then, you know, and couldn't possibly do to 10 to 1,000 in terms of like a scale up, right? You've got product market fit, visionary, but just doesn't have that next thing, right, in them. And I think that's fine, right? Like people have to be honest with themselves about it. But in order to get from that 0 to 1, which is where we entered, we were pretty young as a company when we entered Techstars, like 9 months. In order to get to that, to then most of my job now is vision, delegation, and a lot of the stuff that just can't be done by anyone else, like, right, bits and pieces, you know, putting out fires here and there. Being able to say, I'm not good at this, but I trust my team around these things. Being able to just say, it may not be how I would do it. It may not even be in the same ballpark of how I would do it, but I trust, like, you hire smart people and you let them rip. Like that I think has been the number one thing. When we met up in London during the middle of the course, I was so sick that I really shouldn't have been there. And I'm just pushing myself. And in reality, if I had had more trust and just said, you know, I can take this, I need to get better, you know, I think that would have been better. So that's been one thing. I've also gone through a lot of therapy, just being flat out. Like, I found a point where I was like, I can't bring people on these emotional roller coasters of when I'm up high, when I crash down low, the serotonin dragon, the, you know, dopamine, whatever is impacting me in my life. I need to understand myself better so that I can lead better. And that has probably been the biggest change. And it's relatively hard to just sit there in the morning and really dive deep into some of your demons and some of your strengths and some of the things you don't really want to talk about, and then go pick yourself up after potentially a pretty rough session and then just go build for the rest of the day for 12 hours. Like, that's been a huge unlock. I think the final thing is just this belief that there is still goodness in this space as well. I think towards the end of Techstars, especially with the market the way it was, but still the pervasiveness of a lot of the bad actors and just this uncertainty in terms of regulation, if you're told that what you're doing is on the fringe or that you're not quite kosher, it gets to you after a certain point. That, I think, has been a huge change also. It's like, holy crap, we're building something important. We can unlock freedom for more people. We're doing something that matters, and we're not going to be locked up for it. You know?
Yeah, that is big. Looking ahead and thinking about the money side of things. And obviously you were with us on demo day and pitching to investors and telling them all about Trustware. What we did, as you know, this year is that we opened up our Techstars Web3 demo day investor meetings to alum and those who have gone through Techstars in past years and now maybe fundraising, that maybe weren't fundraising back when they went through demo day to begin with, because obviously we're Techstars for life, right? If one of those investors that you met with last week turned around and said, hey, here's a $5 million term sheet, how would that change your roadmap, or would it?
There's so many things that we have at the tail end that would come faster? I mean, I think that's the first thing, but a lot of the differentiation is speed and iteration. I think we've been doing a lot better at speed, iteration, user feedback more recently. That's been huge. I'd love to go build, like, one of the things I love, this concept of aliasing. So like imagine making every phone number in the world payable, and then it maps to the .OX, then it chooses your preferences and things go where you want them to be. Take a gamer tag, take an email, right? However you can find your friends, however you can find the identifier, you should be able to pay with that, right? These are, even a URL, for example. Like I'm giving away some of the little tail end stuff, but this is like, how fast we could roll that out? I want to be on mobile, right? Right now, we're still just trying to perfect the desktop thing, and that limits us in terms of the, more devices, more connections, more cross-chain ability. That would be coming faster, and I'd probably do a little less admin stuff myself. We see it working already, and there's many reasons why. The point is, it would be the same. Now, the other answer to this, which I think has been really interesting, is like, well, we know we can also do it on a low level, and I love this idea. Jonathan and I went through Draper University right at the time where Boost VC was being built, and I read this article from Adam, who's one of Tim's sons, and it was like around the cockroach. It's pretty old now. But it's like the cockroach is a company that no one wants in their space, just like a cockroach in your kitchen, for example. Yep. And they just don't die. We've been excellent at keeping our burn rate low. When people look at what we've built, they're like, you built this for how much? And it's like, yeah, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. That's where the pay is. But I don't think it would be that much different. I think I'd probably do more intense stuff, though. The intense framework stuff is really kind of a huge unlock. That's like another 10x thing I think is coming.
What's the intense framework?
Think about everything being transferred on chain and the gas it incurs versus the ability to essentially kind of do things off chain and then have them drop down. Like, we're looking at this and it's like, well, here's another improvement. Like, if this is already this cheap to send money, can you imagine if you're doing some of this proving or this logic off chain and then essentially filtering it back in? I say, Pete, I've got this money. And you say, I've got USDT on Base. You have USDC on Solana, and the end user wants that USDC on Solana. I don't need to go through all these hops, right? Even though like the stuff we're built on Axel or Squid makes that really seamless and makes it really fast. What if you didn't have to go through all those hops? What if I could just call Pete? It's another like kind of almost switchboardy concept. I call Pete and say, hey, can you deliver that there? That's a huge unlock for all of crypto. I love surfing, and you could see part of the thing is like looking out over the horizon and seeing the wave that you want to take. And knowing that you're in the right position. And it's like, well, like the little swell is coming for stuff like this. Maybe not here yet, but might be coming.
Say I'm in Boston in December 2026, and you and I are having a drink. And tell me what Trustware will look like at that point with success.
Oh, I hope we pay for the drink with Trustware. Think about it this way. It's like, all right, what if you have a project that did release a token? They do really well, and for some reason you can use some of it. Well, what if you could just pay for our coffee with that? And by the time it reaches the coffee shop through one QR code that you scanned, it's hitting their bank account or it's hitting their self-custodial wallet. There's ways to do it already with Trustware and what we've built with the switchboard, make it super simple, right? But I want it to be in such a way that more people can get more of the money that they earn instantly through something as simple as a QR code. Most of that is built. It's really just refining that process. But that would be number one. I think number two is that we've finally found a cohort that is, and also like just listening to Tim Draper about this as well. I try to listen to all this stuff. It's like that just delights customers where it's in the background in the same way that you're talking about like on-chain finance takes over when most people don't realize it's in the background. Yes, I want people visiting a Trustware profile for that use case, but there's so many use cases that we're now getting approached with or approaching others with that are just in the background. You don't even know you're using it. Potentially, you don't even know you're on chain, and yet the money just arrives for them in what they want on the chain they want or wherever they want. Like that to me would be a success. I think the final thing also, I could say, Pete, just on a more investor to entrepreneur level, like I'm proud to have given back to you guys so you can invest what you've made on us into the next generation, because the talent you guys have coming into Techstars Web3 is just nuts. I mean, I was blown away. Companies that already have 70K MRR.
Yeah.
Inside of, insane. So
yep. As Greg LeMond said, it never gets any easier. You just pedal faster. Finding good founders and finding what my friend Allard Luxinger from last week's episode calls unstoppable founders is something that with repetition, you will get there. Like with you guys in the program, it was, we sat down, we had a chat for a half hour, and the things we talked about, and if we had any ideas and say, well, think about this, think about that, you just went and did it. And that's what we saw with this year's group, is that all 6 of them just went and did it.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't that it was acting upon our direction. It was that you talk through something, you give somebody some options, and they're like, okay, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. And boom, they go do it. And I think that's it. It's the unstoppable. It's the motivated. It's the mission minded. Right. And realizing the power of the network to help you as well. So.
Well, on that note, like the last time we got on this podcast, we talked a lot about like the Maslow's hierarchy situation.
Yeah.
Right. And that is like the motivation when you look at it. Like, yes, businesses need to make money. Yes, we are building payments. Like this is highly scalable. It's unbelievable when like the numbers that we look at when it reaches scale. But at the core level, it's like we're building for the lowest tier of Maslow's hierarchy. Money is money. Like we treat all assets as good assets. We treat all chains as home chains. And that's what drives me, is essentially this idea that we can solve the world's problems through technology. The technology exists. Let's go bring it out. We were driven by something more than just, oh, we want to succeed at this business. It was just like, all right, we believe this should exist. That's the end of the sentence. And I saw so much just like energy of like, especially people that had pivots. And I was talking to some of the founders of like, you do realize that when you come out of that pivot and the team is still like, yes, we can. Yes, we're moving towards this. Like that's even more powerful in some ways. Now you've been through the fire as well. Now you know the level of uncertainty it can get. So,
yeah, it all comes back down to founder problem fit, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you started with Trustware, is saying that you had this firsthand pain, this firsthand experience with the pain that you're trying to relieve. And finding that for founders in a pivot is really hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, if they think they had it already, and then it's okay, you have to find this, go dig deeper and find another pain. Find a pain that it's something that you've experienced, or something that the founding team or one of the founding team, because they really need to be able to be in a position to drive that forward. I was talking to someone last night, and it was specifically about Aave, and that Stani Kulichov had recently been in Dublin. Okay. And Stani is the founder of Aave, and now referred to as Avara. And the friend I was talking to, he said, listen, he just feels more comfortable investing basically through Aave and earning yield through Aave. His comfort level had gone through the roof after shaking Stani's hand. And that creates an element of trust in what is supposed to be a trustless ecosystem. Is there an element of trust that Trustware needs to create in the market to get to that point where the switchboard is just the switchboard? It's just code. It's just the way to get from asset A to asset B, or asset A, B, C, D, and E to asset F, right? Is there an element of trust in the Trustware name, brand, you and Jonathan as founders, that you need to create in the market?
Yeah, I mean, trust in a trustless world is that's a tagline right there, Pete. I love it. I think beyond this idea of making it simpler for a user, the identity level resolution and just the switchboard, making anything payable, the driving force behind, I think, Trustware has been always, and like this is really why like Jonathan and I clicked immediately, is like we've seen the ugly and we wanted to do something where at all points we just keep the user in mind, right? We want to do what's right for the user, and that has been very painful at some points. There are many ways to monetize this that are not user-friendly, right? So we look at and we really put our heads down and say, how can we do this? How can we stay outside? Like, how can we have the least impact on a user's day-to-day life? And that's a driving force. But it's also like when you look at building a company like this for $400,000, like I really very rarely toot my own horn. But it's like, this is not the years that we've been building Trustware, at least for me. And I know for Jonathan, it's the same. This is the 10 years before. This is me sitting there at 24 and saying, I have X amount of times, if I fail fast, to iterate and to learn coming out of college and saying, I'm going to go and work at Binance. I'm going to go work at Rain, but I'm going to save every penny I can. I'm not going to go crazy. Yes, I bought the car I always wanted. I later sold it, but like, it's about like, what allowed us to do this is reputation, first and foremost. I really don't think I have many enemies out there. I've really tried to do right for the last 10 years, basically in this industry. And then it's just a burning desire to get up to bat and shoot for a grand slam, not even just a home run. And that takes all of the pre-planning before it. And so when I look at myself, and what I'm most proud of is that at the points in my career where I had the choice to do something that was untrustworthy, I chose the long tail reputation over potentially sometimes life-changing money. There's definitely been times where I look at my bank account, I said, that's silly, but like that trust, that reputation. And I think you nailed also, it's like when we got into Techstars, I was like, we've been given this unreal opportunity. I want to make sure that we do everything in here, that we show up every single day. And honestly, I've gotten more value out of the program afterwards. I don't think it's a great deal for someone that is just going to get into the program, take the check, and then not listen or not show up to all of the stuff that you guys put your blood, sweat, and tears into, or not talk to you guys on a reoccurring basis afterwards. It's like you're wasting your own equity, right? That could have been used in another way. But for us, because we said, we also trust you guys. We trust that it is founder first. There are ways to do it in a way where you make it successful because your investors are happy, because you've changed the world. Maybe that's a pipe dream, but I don't think so.
No. This baseline of this foundation of trust that you've built around yourself as an individual is what will get you there, right?
Yeah.
You stay on that course, and there's a lot of, kudos to you, Jesse, for that, because it takes strong will to do that.
Last thing on that, I actually remembered. For the trustless side also, I love the fact that we don't touch the assets, we don't run the rails. It's like that's the other side of it, is like you don't necessarily have to trust Trustware. You only have to trust us to route it properly. The rest of the infrastructure underneath, like we've been really, really, really selective as to who we partner with and what we build on. Like Axelar, one of the big reasons we chose that, it's not just an amazing platform Squid built on top, but also like props to Jonathan as well and the rest of our team for building it in a way that actually the user doesn't necessarily need to trust all that. Do I want them to, when they shake Jonathan's hand, realize what the heck's going on here? Yeah. Do I want them when they shake my hand or anyone that's joined the team? And do I think that the team has also recognized that, because a lot of them hopped from more stable careers to come join? Yes. But it's also like build trust and build trustless. And I think,
I like that. And for founders listening who are staring down the same kind of grind that you've been through, what's your one piece of advice for them for making it through the long middle?
There's this picture of this mountain in front of this guy, and then the zoom out is like this little hill and everything that they've climbed before. There's this founder's journey visualization where it's so exciting, and then it's the pits, and then there's like the little thing and the little thing where it keeps on going up. It's not straight. That first day at Draper before I left, like I saw Jonathan off to the car. I wrote on the wall 500,000 users. And at the time, like the concept was called token shared, which is funny. It changed like 2 minutes later. 500,000 users in 9 months. Boy, was I freaking wrong. That was so silly where I was at the time, where I was like, if we just solve this problem, like I wasn't thinking about go to market. And this wasn't even my first company. But it was just kind of that process that you guys teach, the abilities to stare down the barrel and say, like, just another day. I don't think people should do it unless they are driven by something bigger than the money. Go look at what I was doing before. It's like if I had just kept a cushy job in an exchange, and no shame, no bad mouthing to that, because we need people on all of these sides, right?
We
like,
do.
But if I had just kept that and just bought Bitcoin, would I have turned out better? In terms of just like pure like dollars in the bank, but that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for a chance to get up to bat. And so every day that we're alive, I'm like, thank whatever power is out there that we get another chance to go do something today. But if you don't feel that off the bat, don't do it, because this is like the hardest thing. And it's soul crushing. I've gone through 2 relationships in this, moved back like home at some point instead of living in the middle of Boston in a beautiful apartment. Like all the things you think that are at the end of that rainbow, imagine kind of slogging through the mud to even get a chance to get there. If that doesn't sound appealing, don't do it. If it does sound appealing, this is the most rewarding path you could ever hope, because you get people like Pete, like Hugh getting on the phone with me like week after week. Seriously. He doesn't have to do that. But you meet those types of people. I would never have met those types of people without starting this journey. So if that's attractive, then go do it. If any of the other stuff sounds miserable, then yeah, like choose a life of balance, please.
Yep. No, I hear you. Yeah. And Jesse, you know that I round out this podcast by asking everybody the same question. But before I get there, is there anything about Trustware that you think people should know that I haven't asked you about yet?
Oh, yeah. Look, the problem that we are diving into will only get worse, right? And it only gets worse as more fragmentation hits the market. And we see competitors as not really competitors. Like we like to say we co-opt, we don't compete. ENS could be considered a competitor on the identity side. It's integrated into our system. Squid, we love them. Amazing team, by the way. Like just shout out to them and everything they've done and how fast they've done it. Could be considered a competitor. We integrated them. If part of this resonates with you, our line is open, because we build for everyone and we build for everything and we're composable. If part of the ecosystem or the problem space that we're doing, you're like, hey, I've got a burning desire to build part of it, like also talk to us, right? Because most of our team came in by just literally starting. And I think that the last thing is, like, if you believe that there is a world where we move faster as an ecosystem, like I'm talking about all of crypto, by reducing these kind of these camps, reducing the amount of times that you see CT fighting between Solana people and ETH people, or roadmaps basically converging around the next thesis because it's what's investable. If you believe that there's something more than that we can do, it's like, then you're in the same problem space as us, because what we believe is all money is good money. All people deserve the ability to have this. That's why you can sign up for free right now in 30 seconds and grab a .OX name. And if you have an internet connection, you can do it. Like we said that on the last podcast too. That's all it takes, right? If you believe that that's a better future than this tribalistic, ecosystem specific, there's a lot of great ecosystems, nothing wrong with it. But if you believe that that's a better future, please check us out. And this is the last thing. It's like we look at this as like TVL, total value locked.
Yeah.
Right? Is one way of looking at this ecosystem. But in a truly cross-chain interoperable world, in the world where you can trust both us and a trustless ecosystem, shouldn't it be TVL, total value linked? Because the world can all talk to each other through that switchboard, right? That is what we're building for. If there's one sentence, that's just it. TVL.
Total value linked as opposed to total value locked.
All the people, all the nodes, if you talk about a person, a node, which is like a wallet in our ecosystem, anyone linked to a .OX, this one identity, that's total value linked. And that number is actually huge right now, comparatively to like even our traction. And we hope it grows even bigger, because that's the end goal.
And how can people get a .OX name?
You can visit trustware.io and click launch app. And then all you need is a wallet, say a MetaMask, Coinbase wallet. Select a username. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. But for the most part, if you're, I think, over 8 characters, it's free. And that's it. Takes like literally less than 30 seconds. Do it on the desktop. Our mobile experience isn't great right now. It's getting better. And then feel free to hit me up and I'll send you a little gift. So that's one way to get in. It's live right now, which is crazy.
And we will link all that in the show notes, obviously. But back to that last question. I already asked you this once 2 years ago, but what is one more thing that people would not expect to know about Jesse Phillips?
Oh, I mean, this was actually part of our conversation the other day in New York, but it's like, do something else, not professionally, not for the money that you love, because the balance is part of it. I'm a huge bass head. I love electronic music. It's been a driving force for me for so long, and I DJ a lot. outside of this. So gives me a way. I like things where I'm completely focused on something. It's the same kind of flow as when you really feel it when you're building. But yeah, that's a love, and I will travel around the world to go follow my favorite bands and DJs and stuff like that. I know you love music too. So
absolutely. I asked some of this years ago, but is there a analogy or a parallel between the composability of beats and the composability of blockchain and Web3?
Yeah. And there's also a rhythm to it, right? You see development cycles also as like a rhythm, right? You see things go along. And then if you play at one intensity, then the song is boring. But you feel the excitement when the drummer starts. I'm a drummer as well. When the drummer starts going a little harder, when the kick drum starts going, when the riff builds, that's also development as well. Like the most exciting thing for us is like when all the pieces of the puzzle, when all the toolkit starts working, when all of our composable pieces starts working, and then boom, right? Now things are so much faster. Things that used to take us 6 months are taking us 1. But also for the industry, it's the same exact thing. Like what happened in DeFi summer after like Uniswap and PancakeSwap. Holy crap. It just goes, the crescendo happens. So I think we're all on this like musical wave of building. And I hope to see an industry that retains some of its roots, but also is integrated into everyday life, right? Real world Ethereum is like one of the big ones. I know you talked about that on this podcast as well. But like on-chain finance can also do that. All this stuff in the background. And we continue writing the music in the DeFi space and the trustless but trusted space as well.
Well, Jesse, never stop writing. Never stop writing. This has been fantastic. Another enlightening chat with Jesse Phillips. I will chalk this one up. So thank you.
You too, Pete. It's always a pleasure. Love when we get a chance to hop in, and I'll see you in Boston and we'll get you that mustard.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jesse. That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Jesse Phillips for opening up his mind once again to help us figure out why he does what he does. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review on Spotify, Apple, or on moneyneversleeps.ie/rate. Thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent producer to work with on your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor in the next version of the internet, and I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie and how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.